Hey everybody, this is Stuart with Wine on the Dime, and today I'm doing something different. I'm not at my recording sort of booth where I normally shoot all my wine reviews. I'm here at my editing desk, and the reason why is because I was looking around YouTube the other day, and I noticed that there were some people who were making some content, educational content on wine. So Wine Folly is somebody who's very popular. They go out and make a whole bunch of content, but it's not very specific to WSET. And when I started searching for the WSET, there were a lot of people who are making content, but it was very much like, we're going to take the questions that are already in the study guide and just regurgitate them back to you and answer them, and it's very superficial. I figured I could help by creating some sort of quiz format that you could follow along with on your own time, but it would also be beneficial because I'm actually creating a whole bunch of questions that I think I would expect to see on the WSET exam. With it being Wine on the Dime, there's some that wouldn't quite be formatted the same way, but all of the content is based upon what you see in the WSET curriculum, specifically the level 2 for this series. So if you like the video, share it with your friends, but let's go ahead and get over to see what the quiz format is going to look like for this video. The first chapter is on tasting and evaluation. The way that this is going to work out is it's 25 questions. Now, based upon the chapter, there may be more questions or there may be less questions. So it's just whatever I can come up with as I'm going through the chapter. So the format is question slide and then answer slide. So you will see the answer and you will get a description as to why that is the correct answer. I also recommend you write down your answers as you go. Pretend like you're taking the test, and if you're really at the point where you've studied the chapter, then this should help you kind of get some more of that pre-exam prep before you go in and actually take the course. And like I said, all these questions were created by me. Some are kind of very traditional, what you would kind of see on the WSET, and some of them get a little quirky because, after all, it is Wine on the Dime. But all of that material, in order to answer the question, will be found within these chapters, and you will still find everything you need in the textbook. I didn't get information from outside the textbook. It's 100% WSET Level 2 textbook. So with that said, let's get to the first question. All right, question number 1. Which wine glass is used for evaluation in the WSET program? A, Bordeaux glass. B, Burgundy glass. C, ISO glass. D, WSO glass. At this point, if you want, go ahead and pause the video, answer the question, and then click resume. In a second, you'll get to the answer. All right, so the answer is C, ISO glass. The WSO glass is something I just totally made up. Yeah, it's not even a thing that I'm aware of. There are glassware manufacturers that make Bordeaux and Burgundy glasses, but they're not typically used in the WSET curriculum. ISO is designed around a lot of specific specifications on the actual, like, the depth of the bowl, the thickness of the rim, things like that. So the bowl is large enough to swirl a sample and to be able to get that smell, but it's not going to be giant like a Bordeaux glass or like super thin like a champagne flute. It's designed to be just sort of an all-purpose glass for the WSET evaluations, and that's why that's the correct answer. Question number 2. What is the volume in milliliters for a wine sample in an ISO glass? Sometimes this is a trick right here. So sometimes on an exam, you will see the actual answer for a previous question in a future question. Don't be afraid to go back and double check to see if you got the right answer on that. This is a perfect case of when that type of thing would pop up, and I did that on purpose for you guys. So the answers are A, 125 milliliters, B, 50 milliliters, C, 175 milliliters, D, 75 milliliters. Pause right here if you need some more time. All right, so the answer to this question is B, 50 milliliters. 125 milliliters and 175 milliliters are considered full pours, depending on how big you're going to be pouring, and that's too much of a sample for an ISO glass. It's going to be coming up too close to the rim, and you're not going to really be able to swirl it and nose it effectively or determine color, so that's way too much. 75 is close, but it's still too much because at that point you're going over the midpoint of the bowl, and when you tilt it to look at it, you're not going to actually be able to see the color because everything's going to kind of run up to the rim and you're going to probably spill it. So 50 milliliters is the answer, but I mean, when I'm at home and I'm not reviewing wine, I'll pour in 375 milliliter pours. It's half a bottle. I have glasses big enough to do it, and you know what? You can't judge me because I provide you free content. So I'm going to pour half a glass sometimes, or half a bottle. You know what? I'm going to pour half a bottle. I don't care. Let's move on. Question number 3. Which of the following is not a descriptor for wine appearance intensity? Deep, dark, medium, or pale? Pause if you need more time. The answer to that question is B, dark. Deep, medium, and pale are all descriptors for wine appearance intensity. So like how intense that color is. Dark is not approved. It's just, I just threw it in there to kind of trip you up. But that is also the type of thing that you may see on a WSET exam. All right, question number 4. What is the correct order for the color of rosé from lightest to darkest? Is it A, orange, salmon, pink, B, orange, pink, salmon, C, salmon, orange, pink, D, pink, salmon, orange? Pause if you need more time. All right, so the answer to this is D. It's pink, salmon, orange. Pink indicates there's no presence of oxidation in the wine. Rosé is, on the most part, supposed to be pretty pink, at least when it's very fresh. Salmon has a slight orange coloration, and then orange is just orange. So always keep in mind, as things oxidize, they become more closer to the brown spectrum. So if you're going from like a light pink to a orange, then at that point you're getting oxidized. And if you let that wine keep going, it will turn brown. So at some point, everything becomes brown, whether you're a white wine, a red wine, or a rosé. Brown wine doesn't necessarily mean it's good wine. Sometimes it's past its prime, sometimes it's not. But on the flip side, as you're looking at this, think, what is the lightest shade of red, and then how do I get to orange? And that will always take you through the pink, salmon, orange sort of route on the color appearance guide. Question number 5. Which of the following red wines may be the oldest based on its color? Ruby, tawny, garnet, or purple? Pause if you need more time. The answer is B. As wines develop, and I just mentioned this, they oxidize and turn brown. So tawny is the most developed of the color descriptors in terms of going towards the brown. That's where you're going to have this like really kind of a deep brick effect that's very noticeable in terms of starting to get to that brown coloration. Garnet, it's like a much darker, slightly browner version of ruby. Ruby is ruby. I mean, just look at the color of a ruby. Just kind of look at my logo. That's pretty much kind of ruby in terms of where that wine is within the bottles on my logo. As for purple, when you're actually looking at the appearance of a wine and you're holding it, look for blue around the rim. If you can find blue around the rim, then at that point you have a purple wine. If you have no blue and then it's still very red, then at that point you have a ruby wine. Then as it starts getting a little bit more of that kind of orange to brown, it'll slightly get a little bit darker. A good wine that I have coming out soon is a Rioja Reserva. That is a garnet wine. It's not tawny, but it's garnet. It's definitively garnet. And then going into tawny, think of like port. It's like getting pretty much to the point where it's brown but maintains some of that red coloration. And then brown is just totally brown. So you'll know that when you see it. All right, so next, question 6. You are evaluating 4 samples of wine. Which wine or wines could be faulty? Answer here is could. So sample 1, clear, medium brown, red wine. Sample 2, clear, pale ruby, red wine. 3, clear orange rosé wine. Sample 4, hazy pale white wine. Your answers are samples 1 and 2, samples 2 and 4, samples 1 and 4, or only sample 4. Pause if you need some time. You're done. Okay, cool. The answer to this question is C. So sample 1 could be faulty if the wine is brown, but the presence of the wine being brown doesn't necessarily mean it's faulty. You have to go through an evaluation of it, nose it. If it smells like it's too heavily oxidized or other things, then that's how you determine if it's faulty. So sample 2 is just a good wine. It's a clear, pale, ruby red wine. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Sample 3 is orange. That can be an acceptable color for a rosé, so don't necessarily think because the wine is orange that it's a bad thing. Also, with the orange wine movement, there are a lot of wines, especially white wines, that are being fermented on their skins to kind of bring out more pigmentation. So orange wine may not necessarily mean that it's an incorrect wine. So also keep that in mind with a lot of the modern trends in winemaking. Sample 4, hazy pale white wine. In general, hazy coloration doesn't necessarily mean that it is a faulty wine, because sometimes wines are bottled unfined, unfiltered. Sometimes they bottle, I've even seen wines bottled with the lees. There's some things that go on that can make a wine hazy. So that doesn't mean that it is a bad wine, but hazy coloration in a wine that was not supposed to be hazy means that that's an indication of biological taint. Yeah, I said that. And that means it's probably bad. So like I said, the only way to know that is if you actually not only pour the wine and look at it, but you actually go through some of the other evaluative criteria, nosing it if you can, taste it, and then at that point, that will let you kind of know whether or not it's a wine fault or a winemaking decision. All right, so question number 7. Which of the following aromas could indicate an unclean condition in a wine? A, petrol/vinyl, B, tar, C, cardboard, D, raisins. Pause if you need more time. All right, so the answer to this is cardboard. So the reason why is petrol is actually a varietal characteristics of certain types of wine, like specifically Riesling. And on top of that, some of that intensity can actually be developed as those age. So a petrol/vinyl, I call it, sometimes it smells like or tastes like grandma's couch with those plastic covers over it. Those types of things can actually be a very common thing within wine. So that doesn't necessarily indicate that it's an unclean wine. Tar is an uncommon aroma in many varietals, but it's actually a signature kind of component of certain types, specifically wines like Northwest Italian varietals that are well aged, or things like Pinotage from South Africa. So that's another thing that you have to keep in mind there. Raisins could be typically a result of either the winemaking process, like for example, if it's like a Valpolicella Ripasso or something, or like an Amarone. Those are actually intentional winemaking decisions to make the wines like that. In terms of the actual other effects, raisins in a wine can be a result of tertiary. So as wines are aging, the oxidative effect through the cork, it can actually develop raisin notes on its own, and then at that point, it's just part of the winemaking process or part of the aging. All right, so the cardboard aspect, this is why it's the right answer. Cardboard, or like a damp kind of mildewy cardboard, is a result of TCA contaminating the bottle. So it's gotten in there, it's actually kind of made it really funky, and this is actually what it's called when a wine is corked. A lot of people think, oh, it's corked because there's cork. No, it's just sediment from opening the bottle. Corked actually means that there was some sort of contaminant that actually made it smell funky, and that contaminant is TCA. So this is the correct answer for that question. Question number 8. Which of the following are the correct color choices for a white wine? A, lemon, gold, amber. B, green, gold, amber. C, lemon, yellow, amber. D, white, gold, brown. Pause if you need more time. All right, the answer to this is A. Green, yellow, and white are not descriptors in the WSET curriculum, or at least the WSET level 2. Lemon green is a descriptor in the level 3. So at that point, you will expand out some of the descriptors on some of these categories, like for red wine and white wine. You'll get a little extra breadth to look from. But in terms of this, lemon, gold, amber, once again, you're going from lemon, which is a very clean, pure yellow, to amber, which is starting to oxidize, which is starting to get more brown. All right, so once again, you have amber, which is like a really concentrated gold. You have gold and lemon, and all of that is a result of the oxidative effect on the wine as it ages. Question number 9. Which of the following is the highest nose intensity in the WSET Level 2 systematic approach? High, intense, pronounced, deep. Pause if you need it. All right, so the answer to this is pronounced. D is the highest descriptor for intensity of appearance, so deep. Intense is, you can say it's intense, but that's just a general category as part of the evaluative purpose. It's actually not a formal like intensity descriptor. You can't say it's intense. The intensity's intense. It's like, that's not a thing. But you can say the nose intensity is pronounced. That would be the correct thing to say in that case. All right, so question 10. Which of the following conditions is not ideal for the evaluation of wine? A, a dark, hard to stain surface. B, bright, natural lighting. C, perfume, scent-free workspace. Or D, a uniform / identical glassware for your tasting set. Pause if you need time. All right, so B, C, and D are all things that you want whenever you're evaluating wine. Bright natural lighting. I have tons of light in my studio, and I probably just made myself look horrible with this other lighting. I even have lighting right here for this. So you want the lighting. Perfume scent-free environment. You don't want other smells messing with your nose and taste sensory apparatus as you're trying to evaluate a wine. So just keep the smells away, and that includes deodorant. So whenever I was judging at the Texas International Wine Competition, we actually were told, do not bring scented deodorant. Make sure it's purely scent neutral because you don't want to affect your nose. You don't want to affect the nose of the judges next to you. So they were even kind of saying just like wash really well if you don't have unscented deodorant or can't find it. And that was that was the guidance. Just you don't want to screw with people's noses. And then on the flip side, uniform identical glassware. If you're evaluating and you're trying to compare colors, especially whenever you're looking at multiple wines in the same set, having the identical glassware is good because when you pour the same size sample and you tilt it, it'll look the same compared to if you have like a large Bordeaux glass versus a like white wine glass versus they're all the shapes can really mess with the evaluation. That's why I use pretty much the same glass on every video whenever I'm reviewing wine, as I want to be very consistent in terms of how I'm seeing it. As for a dark, hard to stain surface, that's not a bad thing to have. Like, so I actually have that black tablecloth back there, but if you notice in my videos, I actually use a white piece of paper. So I do have that white background. The white background will allow for you to see true color contrast on the wine. If you're using a dark background, you're not going to see that. So you want like a white working space when you're evaluating color, but if the rest of the tablecloth is black, that's fine as long as you have something that's a nice pure white to bounce that color off of. Question number 11. The best white wines have moderate tannins. True or false? All right, so the answer to this is false. White wines, with very few exceptions, do not show the presence of tannins. So I did mention orange wines. Orange wines are an example of some white wines that can possess tannin, and that's because they're fermented on the skins. So that is, they're almost like their own category though in a way. But if you're getting like your Chablis from France, you should not notice tannins on it. If you're getting a Chardonnay from California, it may be over oaked as hell in most cases, in my opinion, but you're not going to get tannins. Tannins are not something that you should typically find in a white wine unless it's a very specific winemaking choice, and typically they kind of tell you that you should be expecting it when you buy the bottle. The following is an indicator of the level of sugar in a wine. A, acidity. B, tannin. C, body. D, sweetness. The answer is D. If you get this wrong, I don't even know what to say because I'm just talking about the level of sugar in a wine. It's sweet. I really wouldn't know what to say if you got this one wrong. If you did get this one wrong, then you have to subscribe to this channel as a punishment. Just saying. And you also have to click the notifications bell. Make sure you click all because you missed this question, you obviously need this channel. Question 13. When pairing wine with food and or occasions, which of the following is correct? A. The food/occasion should be highlighted over the wine. B. The food/occasion should be matched with the wine. C. The wine should be highlighted over the food/occasion. D. Wine, food, occasion pairing does not matter. Pause if you need time. Okay, so the answer here is B. You want food and wine to complement each other. So you want to find wines that are as intense as the food that you're pairing them with. You don't want like a really weak ass red wine with like this crazy salted black pepper steak. That's not going to work out. You want those things to match up. Just like you don't want like a German ice wine to go with your potato chips. Those like the ultra sweet, syrupy sweet versus that really salty, starchy. Those aren't things that are going to work out. You want everything to be even on par, and that not only includes when you're pairing food with wine, but you're pairing the occasion. If it's laid back, don't bust out a bottle of $400 champagne. At that point, you're just being a douche. You just chill with friends and drink some damn rosé or something. All right, so which of the following is not a conclusion of quality for a wine? Faulty, good, fantastic, or outstanding? All right, so the answer to this is C. Wine can be fantastic. It can be fantastic. I mean, there's many times I've been reviewing wine, and I'm like, this is a fantastic wine. That's not the final score, though. That's not an official descriptor of the WSET program. Outstanding would be what I would technically want to say, but that's only if it falls under the criteria, which I typically use as BLIC, the balance, length, intensity, and complexity. So it has to have a perfect score on that in order for it to be what I would write down as an outstanding wine. If I was doing a WSET evaluation for my channel, I call it great, because I kind of had already done that before I went through the WSET stuff, changed the scoring, and yeah, that's fine, whatever. But in my case, it's great or outstanding. No such thing as fantastic. All right, so for question 15, which of the following are examples of a green fruit? Red apple, green apple, lime, gooseberry are your options. Your answers are 1, 2, and 3, 1, 3, and 4. I missed a comma there. That's going to bug me. 1, 2, and 4, or 2, 3, and 4. Pause if you need more time. All right, so the answer to this is C. It's red apple, green apple, and gooseberry. Gooseberry is a flavor that's very typical in New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. But on the flip side, red apple, I know you're thinking like, what the hell? That's a red apple. Now, it counts as green fruit in the curriculum. Lime is a citrus, but don't get me started. I mean, keep in mind that the English just got done with rationing, like not too many decades ago. So, I mean, give them time. They'll catch up. Maybe they'll understand it's actually a red fruit. We'll see. Question 16. Which of the following are not descriptors for sweetness in wine? Dry, sweet, off-dry, or luscious? So the answer to this is D. Luscious is not a descriptor in the WSET Level 2, but it is a descriptor in the WSET Level 3. So this is one of those where if you knew the answer to it, but you got this question wrong, you're probably too advanced. Just saying. Or you just didn't know the answer and you go back and study this chapter. But if you thought D was correct, like I said, you're just ahead of your time, or you just didn't read the book. So keep that in mind. Question 17. Which of the following is not a stone fruit? Peach, nectarine, cherry, or apricot? The answer to this is cherry. Though it might be tough on the inside with that big old seed, it's not considered a stone fruit. Stone fruits have very large, hard seeds in the center, while many cherries do as well. Cherries actually fall into the red fruit category if it's a red cherry. If it's a black cherry, it falls kind of into the black fruit category. Once again, the English just got done with rationing. Just give them time. They'll figure all this out. All right, so question 18. The finish is the time the total taste of a wine lingers in your mouth after being swallowed or spat out. True or false? All right, so the answer to this is B, false. And the reason why is, while there may be things that are going on inside your mouth and things that you're tasting after you've spat out the wine, and those could go on for, say, like a minute and a half, are they the desirable things? So, for example, if you're drinking a wine and you drink it and all the fruit is there for the first 30 seconds, and then maybe you get a little bit of barrel notes, which are nice, and then it just goes away to this like funky, really nasty bell pepper and bitter tannin, and that clings for like another minute. The finish ended at about the 40-second mark on that wine, not the minute and a half mark. You want to take a look and say, when are all the nice things gone, and when is the nasty stuff still hanging on? And at that point, where the nice stuff goes away, is your finish for the wine. So don't confuse this as, oh, I can taste this wine for 2 minutes, but it tastes like gas. That's not the finish. The finish ended like a minute and a half ago, and you just didn't realize it. Unless you got this question right, then in that case, good job. Question 19. The following grapes have thick skins and thus have more tannins. 1. Grenache, 2. Syrah, 3. Cabernet Sauvignon, and 4. Pinot Noir. Answers are 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 1 and 3, and 2 and 3. Pause if you need time. All right, so the answer to this is Syrah and Cabernet Sauvignon. Grenache and Pinot Noir are thin-skinned grapes. Pinot Noir is like a super hard grape to grow, and a lot of it is because if you don't have the exact climate, the grapes burn and they basically just kind of like funkify. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's not a nice thing. Grenache, while it's often found in some warmer environments like Spain, The typical place where those are grown with great quality are actually cooler areas where they either have the right type of airflow, elevation, a lot of things that kind of help with the grape living in those areas. So don't think that, because you buy a whole bunch of Garnacha from Spain, that it thrives in hot environments. Sometimes it doesn't thrive in hot environments like that. It's misleading because Spain typically is a warmer place than like France or some of those other places that grow that grape. So don't let the location of the grape trick you. You have to keep geography in mind as well. In general, Syrah, very thick skin. You see how dark it is when you pour it in a glass. Same thing with Cab, super thick skin. Both of those are very tannic wines and kind of require some manipulation and or aging in order to settle the tannins down whenever they're really extracted well. Question 20. Wines whose grapes are grown in cool climates tend to have more acid than those who are grown in warm climates. True or false? Alright, so the answer is true. Grapes that are grown in warm climates tend to ripen quicker, which results in more sugar production, and as part of that sugar production, the acid gets converted into some of the supporting compounds that help make the sugar. So that is one of those things that as you are getting warmer, and that's why you see like from Australia, you can find some really high ABV wines from Australia. That's because they're producing so much sugar that gets converted into alcohol whenever the yeast do the fermentation process that they can be 15.5% alcohol by volume because they have that much sugar. If you go grab a cold climate wine, I'm for some reason I can't think of one off the top of my head, but if you go grab a cold climate wine, that's going to take a lot of manipulation to get that type of ABV, and you'll probably have to actually add some sort of sugar to the tank in order to up the ABV. So in general, whenever, especially for a lot of winemakers who are trying to make quality natural, don't get me started on that, wines, they're going to not worry about injecting a whole bunch of sugar in to bump the ABV. They're going to make the wines based upon the quality that are needed. The good thing about cold climates, though, is that they also help preserve that acid even as the grape slowly matures over time. So that's one of the reasons why I really love things like Alsace Riesling, is because it takes a really long time for those grapes to develop and ripen, but they preserve so much acid in the end that they don't have to do anything like supplement the wine with tartaric acid in the actual creation process in order to like boost the pH to make it palatable and less flabby. Those wines are already like screaming high on acid, and I mean they're just fantastic wine. Clare Valley Riesling and Chenin Blanc, those are fantastic wines for acid. They just have super high acid. They fully mature, and they're just gorgeous wines. You know me, I'm an acid whore. But also you can think of it this way, like Def Leppard, the hotter you are, the more sugar gets poured onto you. The more sugar, the less acid in the grape. Just think of it that way. All right, question 21. The best sweet wines are those with lower acidity to enhance the sweetness of the wine. True or false? So the answer to this is false. Sweetness and acidity enhance each other. So you don't want a super sweet wine with low acid. It's just going to be really cloying, and it's going to be very tacky, and it's not going to be a good experience. It's going to be like drinking like soda fountain syrup. I mean, that's what it will be like. If you have a really sweet wine with no acid, it's just, it's going to be bad. On the flip side, if it's super acidic as a dessert wine but doesn't have enough sugar, then you're just going to have this really piercing bite. And if you're pairing it with something sweet, then at that point, it's going to be overpowering the sweetness of the item. And they're not going to mesh. Like, you're going to get this really weird experience where you're going from really sweet to really acidic, and it's not going to be a good experience because the palate clash is going to be too high. A good dessert wine, a good sweet wine, has the right amount of acidity and the right amount of sugar, and that will also allow it to pair with things like foods, like especially baked foods that maybe have a reasonable amount of fat in them that are also sweet, because then the sugar and the sugar kind of work with each other, the acidity and the fat kind of cut with each other, and everything works out and plays really well together. But don't get if you get a sweet wine that doesn't have enough acid, it's no bueno, man. It's not going to be a good experience for you. Question 22. The tannins in wine come from which part of the grape? A, the seeds, B, the skins, C, the pulp, D, the juice. B. So the answer is skins. Seeds contain bitter oils, so If you crush wine too hard and it's a really bitter wine, it's probably because you crushed the oils out of the seeds and they were incorporated as part of the wine whenever this is being made. That's not good. You don't want to over crush wine. It makes it taste really bad. All right, so the pulp contains water and sugar, and the juice is actually what gets crushed out of the pulp whenever you're actually crushing the grape in that part of the process. Now, another thing to consider is if you want to experience what tannins are like, there's a couple things you can do here. The example I have here is peel the skin off of a grape and chew it for a really long time, and you'll get this really astringent kind of like sucking the water out of your mouth effect. That is what tannins do. Another thing you can do is you can really over extract tea, and I'm talking about like let it steep for 10 plus minutes and squeeze the bag out and then drink that tea. That's over extracted tannins as well, and that will kind of give you the same effect as peeling a grape if you don't want to spend like half a cent on a grape or however much grape costs now. Question 23. Red wines tend to have more acidity than white wines. True or false? All right, so the answer to this is false. Your average white wine is going to have a pH of around 3 to 3.5, and your average red wine is going to be about 3.3 to 4. There are some wines that are higher in acid than that, and I mean higher in acid, I mean lower in pH. I've actually reviewed a wine once that was 2.5 pH, which is, I drank a glass of it, and I'm pretty sure it like sloughed off the lining of my esophagus because it burned so bad. But me being an acid junkie, I was okay with that. I liked that wine, but I couldn't do more than a glass of it. But overall, 3 to 3.5, 3.3 to 4, depending on if it's white or red. Which of the following answers is the correct order for evaluating body? Light, medium, big, small, medium, big, light, medium, full, delicate, moderate, intense. All right, so the answer here is C, light, medium, full. Big is not a descriptor for wine, though it is for me as of COVID, so I'm glad some people have picked up on that. You don't need to keep leaving comments. And then delicate and intense are not descriptors as well. I mean, you can say this is a delicate wine, but that's not an actual descriptor of the body. It's either light, medium, or full. Question 25. All right, so what is the correct order for the quality of wine from worst to best? Faulty, poor, acceptable, good, very good, outstanding. Faulty, acceptable, good, very good, outstanding. Poor, acceptable, good, very good, outstanding. Or faulty, poor, acceptable, good, very good, or great. All right, so the answer for this is faulty, poor, acceptable, good, very good, outstanding. Faulty is if you open the wine and you're evaluating it and it has some sort of contaminant, or the wine is way past its prime and it's not even worth evaluating. Like if you pour that out, it's supposed to be Chardonnay and it comes out like the color of this microphone right here. I'll just get rid of it. Like it's not going to be good. There's no way that a wine that has gone from supposedly being some sort of lemon or gold is black is now any good. So that, just get rid of it. Poor is actually where you've evaluated it and it's just not well made. It doesn't really fall under any of those guidelines. Acceptable, good, very good. It just depends on how many of those criteria you fulfill. This is why I use the blick. So for example, if you get 0 points, it gets poor. 1 point is acceptable, which I call okay on the channel. 2 points is good. 3 points is very good. And 4 points is outstanding, or as I say, great on the channel. My descriptors are actually D. So if you're a fan of the channel, I probably screwed this up for you if you haven't been really studying and paying attention, because you probably thought great or very good. I mean, sorry about that. But on the flip side, if I really did screw that up for you because you watched the channel so much, thank you. I really appreciate that. All right, so how did you do? If you scored 0 to 54%, you failed. I'm sorry, 55 is passing on the WSET, which means you got at least 14 right. If you got at least 18 right, you passed this section with merit, and if you got 22 right, you passed it with distinction. So very good job on you. So if you're looking for some advice in terms of how to get better in this section, if you didn't quite score where you were hoping for, here are my 3 pointers. First, use a color comparison chart when you're trying to identify color. There's an entire section within the textbook that talks about that. There's also some other examples that you can find online where people have kind of made little sample charts that you can see. Look at those and try to see if you can compare those to each other whenever you're actually going through and performing your evaluation. 2, use the systematic approach tasting sheet. So there actually is that little short sheet that comes with all the descriptors and all of the intensities and everything you need to look for. Use that every single time that you're evaluating a wine until you have it down so tight that you just get it every time. Use that as a reference, and then as you're starting to wean off of it, keep it as a side. Go through and fill everything out as you think you would, and then go back and reference it. All right, so the last tip is to develop tricks to help you and quickly making assumptions when you're evaluating a wine or looking at it. For example, cold weather wines tend to be higher in acid. That's an assumption that you can use pretty regularly. Are there warm wines or warm climate wines that are high in acid? Yeah, there are. But they're, in general, not going to be as high in acid as something like a cold climate wine. So learn those things, and then as you find them, kind of think about those exceptions, but in general, those will help you overall when you're taking the exam. Anyway, this has been Stuart with Wine on the Dime. I hope this video helped you if you're getting ready for your WSET Level 2, or as a refresher for those who have already taken it. If you liked today's video, like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and click that notifications bell so you see when future videos are posted, and I will see you all again soon with another episode of the WSET Level 2 quiz made from Wine on the Dime.